Dear friends, welcome to the discussion on future of education post-corona. We have with us two eminent personalities, Sahil Aggarwal ji, who is the CEO and co-founder of RISHIHOOD University. He is an alumnus IIT Delhi. We also have with us another eminent personality, Dr. SANDEEP, the Director of Compliance, Manipal University. He is also a civil engineer and PhD in finance. Welcome, sirs.
Thank you.
Wars and pandemics always give rise to scientific discoveries, inventions, and most importantly, new methodologies. World Wars I and II led to the invention of plastic surgery, zips, stainless steel, wristwatches, radars, walkies, and many more discoveries. The oil crisis of early 70s led to a search for alternate sources and renewable energy. This time too, one key area of transformation will be the area of education. Remote education has taken the lead now. So with this background, let us try to understand what will be the future of education post-corona. Sahil ji, I request you to make the opening remarks. Has the education moved away from the sage on the stage concept and broken the hierarchies between students and teachers? Have teachers become mere facilitators? What's your take, sir?
Thank you, Dasharathraj, for inviting me here and on this very interesting topic of education. And you're right that one of the most important impacts of Corona has been on education, and I think it has been for the better. It's like a blessing in disguise. Why I say that is, as you're saying that, are we moving away from the concept of sage on the stage and teachers becoming facilitators? Actually, that's the way it should have been. And historically, if you look at some of the world-renowned universities, not just in India like Takshashila or Nalanda, but even the way Plato and Socrates, so we see that the role of a teacher was always to ignite the curiosity in the student. It was not to provide information, because information is available otherwise. And these days, information is actually more information is available digitally than with a particular human. So the role of the teacher more as a facilitator is that can we link those different pieces of information and ignite a curiosity, a sense of purpose, a spirit of learning in the student. And that is what is clearly visible now, because students are using all sorts of opportunities to learn online, and maybe from their parents, maybe from the books that are available to them at home. And the teachers have to really redefine themselves that now we are more of, we just have to take a support role. We can't be the lead actor here.
Sandeep sir was my teacher also. Sandeep sir was a sage, but with the students. No, I made a comment, sir, that you are a sage, but with the students, not on the stage. Yeah. Sir, what is your opening remarks?
Yes, thanks, Dasharathraj. Probably at that point of time also, I believed the classroom should be student-centric. Basically, my focus was more on looking at what were the students' requirements and how the learning process can be made more student-centric. And that's exactly what is happening today, where things have become more student-centric, outcome-based, and different modes in which they can learn, and various ways and means we can deploy to make them learn. So there can be outbound classes, there can be online classes, there can be some kind of activity-based learning or field-based learning. So things have become so complex that we need to really look at something beyond the classrooms, and also look at the student requirements in terms of what they need at this point of time. But keeping in mind the Corona background in terms of social distancing, probably a time will come where the classroom kind of environment will be little minimalized, and we may have more of activities which may have a lot of social distancing possible, as well as online kind of mode of teaching. So we need to really innovate in this part to make sure that the experience what we give to the student is better than what we are offering now. Otherwise, it may lose that kind of importance, because we are finding that if you look at around the globe, students are still valuing that classroom education, because you find that students are not ready to join universities which are deploying only online kind of it. So they are really expecting some kind of a classroom environment, but for a shorter period, they are okay with the online, but they are really looking at a kind of blend experience rather than just online. So we need to really how we can make our education system more flexible and also understand the student requirements.
So has COVID-19 accelerated the acceptance of online education as one of the important models, in the sense it gave that necessary push so that we accept it in much more faster rate? Sahil?
Yes, I think it's not just the impact of COVID. So what COVID has done is that technically it has created a comfort in the people that now we are habitual of online learning. But if we look at the way the process of learning has changed, so there are some important aspects there. One is that now students have the opportunity of anytime, anywhere learning. So it's not just the technology of digital learning, but the entire process that I can choose what I want to learn, and I can choose when I want to learn it and from whom I want to learn it. So these are the things which are only possible with technology. They're not possible in a regular the structured school or the university system. But as Sir was also saying, the online education is not a replacement, because there is a lot of fatigue. We cannot just sit in front of a screen the whole day and keep learning. We are humans and we like to socially interact. So social distancing cannot be practiced in education. Actually, education is antithetical to the idea of social distancing. We have to bring social cohesion in education rather than distancing. So online should be looked at a tool, and some of the aspects of continuous learning, anytime learning, on-the-spot learning that online education has provided us should actually be seen. How can we do these same things in a regular system also, in a formal system also?
Sandeep sir, how has your department been reacting? Before Corona, you also had online classes with guest lectures and so on. So how was the blend before Corona?
Before Corona, it was basically a kind of something like an initiative rather than a need or a kind of a mandate. So it was up to us to decide what can be online, what can be delivered through offline mode. So more of the acceptance was there, but at the same time, it was not something which was necessary or something which was a part of the system. So students per se were not adjusted to that kind of an environment where we have a blend of online and offline classes. So they were more concentrating on offline classes rather than online classes. So now when the situation has changed, it becomes a difficult, it is not that they have not been able to adjust, but at the same time, it takes time. So our system should really bring in a process where we introduce this online learning right from their school level and then bring them to the college level, higher education level, so that they are adjusted to this kind of an environment and then they graduate. So that has not been a part of their process earlier. So now they are slowly getting to it. So before Corona, it was more of a kind of a, not a luxury, I would say. It was more of something, a non-voluntary kind of initiatives. But now we need to really make sure that students get adjusted to this environment. And that engagement with the students in this kind of an online environment is something which will be a challenge for the teachers.
Sahil, how has been the adoption in your organization?
So, since we are a new organization, our formal educational programs have not started yet at RISHIHOOD University, but I have been involved in some other institutions. So, we are a very young organization, and all our audience and all our faculty members are anyway very habitual of this digital form of learning. So, it's not that it is something new to us. It's just good for us that now more and more people are accepting this. But if you look at at a macro level, the opportunity in front of India is actually very tremendous, because you see, this is, if you look at the parents, the current generation of parents in India, it's probably the first time in India that we have a digitally literate generation of parents, or even just a literate generation of parents, because so far in our history we didn't have that kind of a literacy. And now when we have that, imagine the opportunity that is available to the students, because they are not just learning in the school, they can learn in their home, because the parents are literate and many of them are digitally literate. So this has opened up an entire mountain of opportunities.
If digital education becomes so popular, will the regular degrees lose the popularity? What's your take, Sandeep sir?
No, I would not say it would lose their popularity, because regular degrees are always valued by the students, and even it is something like even the industry or anywhere, people definitely value regular degrees. But at the same time, there will be definitely a lot of flexibility built into a regular degree, where the student engagement can be through both offline and online modes. So regular degrees will definitely have more of flexibility in terms of the delivery part of it, in terms of the assessment part of it. So that will be definitely, there will be a lot of curriculum interventions, where the curriculum will be made more flexible, so that any kind of such emergencies can be handled without much of a challenge. But again, when you look at especially degrees in engineering, you need the labs, you need those laboratory experiences. So it is not that we can do everything online. We definitely need offline interventions. But definitely the blend will be there, and whichever can be replaced on an experience, probably universities may try to make it. And as far as the assessment part of the process is concerned, definitely universities will look at more flexible processes, so that in such kind of emergencies, it will be not a big challenge for the universities.
Now, due to this digital mode of delivery, we'll have the access to a few very good teachers. So a few very good teachers can deliver to a large audience. So how will this impact the teacher-student ratio in various colleges? In the sense, there are regulatory bodies that tell that this should be the teacher-student ratio. But now, a few good teachers can address a large gathering of students. How this may change? How the dynamics may change post Corona? Sahil.
So thank you for asking. That's a very interesting question, and I think for the teaching fraternity, this is a moment of reflection. You see, why do people pay so much money to watch celebrities? Bollywood actors and actresses earn so much. Sports stars, they earn so much. Our famous news reporters, because for the same amount of time, their audience is huge. And I think it's for the first time now that teachers will also have that kind of an audience. So if a teacher is good, the number of students is not a bar anymore, because there can be any number of students digitally. So one of my friends, he had written an article. He had suggested that this is an era of millionaire teachers. So till now, we have seen that teaching as a profession has not gained that kind of respect which it should have. When you're talking of sage, we look at with some respect at the profession of being a sage. But in the recent times, that has not been there. I think now for teachers who really have that kind of respect and that kind of an ability, they will be able to reach millions of learners, and this will be a golden time for good teachers.
Sandeep sir, you have been in the compliance side, and you see to it that the proper student-teacher ratio is always maintained.
Yeah.
You also see that many foreign faculty are brought in and they deliver lectures to our students. So how do you see the situation changing in Manipal?
Basically, the faculty-student ratio has been brought in by the regulators to keep in mind that students need that kind of an attention when they are being taught in the classroom, so that institutions do not exploit by getting more students and less faculties, and students get the desired attention required for their learning process. So when it comes to sessions like this, where a large audience is being addressed by a faculty, this has been a practice in some of the top B schools, such like Harvard and all, where you have faculties addressing thousands of students, and definitely teacher-student ratio doesn't matter in such cases. But when we are looking at a developmental level, like an undergraduate program, where students need some more attention from the faculty and need more attention in terms of addressing their difficulties, or they have post-classroom kind of interactions, definitely a certain student-faculty ratio has to be maintained. And of course, with an online learning environment, probably the regulators may have to think of what can be a suitable ratio, So the current ratios are definitely in line with the classroom environment, and expecting that the students will meet those faculties post the classroom, post the classes. So keeping that in mind, keeping the requirements of the students in mind, making sure faculties are not overloaded, these ratios have been created. So maybe in the online era, you may have to think of some maybe more liberalization in those ratios, because more people will be addressed. But at the same time, attending to the requirements of the students may still be there. So it may not be possible to reduce that ratio. That's what is my take.
I'll just add a bit here, Darshatji. So I completely agree with what Sandeep ji is saying. I'll just take it further that this entire notion of the regulator defining the teacher-student ratio and a lot of other aspects has to change. We have to rethink about that. Mostly what is happening is our regulations are being designed for an era which is like 10-15 years behind the present times, and it should have been the other way around, that we have to design our regulations for the future, not for the past. So this notion of the central authorities defining what should be the student-teacher ratio is like putting a cap on the talent of a teacher. If I'm a teacher and if I'm capable of dealing with thousands of students, as Sandeep ji is saying in Harvard, then why not? I mean, why should the regulator stop me and say, you have to create batches in 60 students each?
Yeah, both of them have their own pros and cons. One speaks about the individual attention post classes. Another is the delivery mode of it. I think we'll have to strike a balance between the two. Now, how realistic is delivery of lectures through internet? They say that internet penetration is only 50% in India, that too broadband. This requires lots of broadband. So one of the ideas which came out during one of the earlier panel discussions was that using the free bandwidth of televisions for delivering lectures, it may be possible in a mass scale, but institution-wise, it may not be possible. How realistic is this, Sandeep sir?
Dasharath, I don't know. I have to maybe probably be corrected, because I just checked on the net. There is an improvement in the connectivity in terms of the internet user need, but then I'm not sure whether the usage is only for education purpose. It may be used for entertainment or some other purposes. There is a good improvement in terms of almost 50% of the population is having internet connectivity. That's what I gathered.
We talk of broadband, sir, because it needs.
But at the same time, yes, it doesn't define clearly whether it's a broadband or something lesser than that. But what is important is innovation in this, because we need to look at what can be provided with the different connectivity, with different bandwidths or different kind of connectivity issues. So probably there will be innovations in this in terms of how the population can be reached with lesser bandwidth and in different areas. But I'm sure this kind of challenges can be taken up and definitely be addressed, because a few years back, digital transactions were limited when we had this demonetization and people had a shortage of currency. They started using the online mode of payments and also digital something like credit cards or debit cards. So it is a kind of mindset that yes, if we create an infrastructure and a kind of direction that yes, tomorrow we need to strengthen our online education and make sure it reaches the different areas and when activities. Definitely this will happen in the future. So of course it has been happening in phases, but definitely post-corona, I think it should be strengthened and made, the infrastructure has to be developed further.
Sahil, now what about internet-based education in liberal arts and arts education? Because it's more about interactions and socializing and then coming up with the discussion. So how do you see it happening in?
So first I'll comment briefly on the question of internet penetration. I think that's more about logistics rather than the design itself of internet-enabled education. If you've heard of the interesting experiment that Professor Sugata Mitra conducted many years ago, called hole in the wall. So he would just install a system like a computer system, something similar to a video game, where he would install some learning modules. He created a hole in his office wall, and the students outside the wall, it was a slum area, and the young kids would just come and they would start doing something on that computer, video game, and through that game they kept learning. So they learned biology, they learned physics, they learned chemistry. So it's not that if internet penetration is not reaching there, it's not in their hand. So that is not a limitation. I mean, we can still do a decentralized version of computer labs or internet kiosks where people can come and learn. So rather than setting up schools, which still requires a basic minimum infrastructure, why can't we just set up so many, like we have milk vending points, can't we have education vending points across the country in all rural areas where internet has not reached yet? So now this also relates to the second question that you are asking about. There are some disciplines which are so interactive. Now, the way we have seen interaction is only in the classroom, but we should be ready for an era where the 5G is coming, the speed of internet is, bandwidth is increasing so much that it will almost look live. And then we have the concept of augmented reality and virtual reality. So I was doing some research on that. So even if we have to operate some machine in a lab, let's say, we will be wearing that VR gear, and we will be moving our hands, and it will almost feel as if we are operating the real machine. So we don't have to invest on buying machines for all the students. A basic level of training can be done virtually. Now, I'm not disregarding the importance of social and physical and emotional interactions. They are absolutely important, and they are a core purpose of education. So it's more and more towards blend, as Sandeep ji was saying, rather than looking at these things as two dichotomous and divergent things.
Yeah. So now the next issue is one of the main problems for women going for work was the timing. That's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So they wanted to spend more time with their families. So will the work from home option increase the number of working women? So will many housewives who have given up, the teaching, come back to education? So what's your take, Sandeep sir?
Yes, definitely there's a opportunity for women to encash with this kind of an arrangement if it is possible. But first of all, they need to train themselves in terms of delivering online kind of, whether it's in the industry or whether it's in the education sector. They need to train themselves to work online. So probably that kind of a training, if it is done and if they are able to, they are happy with that kind of an experience, then definitely it's an opportunity, and definitely women can encash it and use it for the benefit of themselves as well as their family.
Sahil, especially in the area of arts and liberal arts, there are many women who are very experienced, but they have not come out, taken up jobs. So what is your take?
That's true. I agree with what Sandeep ji was saying, and so the short answer is yes. That work from home opportunities will increase, and they will also lead to an increase of proportion of women in the workforce. But that's not the only factor which is contributing. In fact, I was discussing with my wife just a few days ago. So the entire nature of work is also evolving. So from an industrial era work, we are moving towards more of a creative and human potential development kind of work. So just as an example, if you look at the role of a human resource development officer, the way it has changed. So it's not now only responsible for recruitment and allocation of job responsibilities and are the people complying with what they're supposed to do. The entire concept of total development of a human through their organization, the development of human potential itself is taking a front seat, and that's largely the nature of this work is largely feminine, and that's why the role of women becomes so much more important. It's not just that logistically it's possible for women to work. No, the nature of work demands that women will do this kind of work better than men.
Sir, during this phase of Corona, one of the administrators of Manipur, what have you learned? I know we have not yet come out of it. I am talking much ahead. We have many more things to learn.
Yes, one of the most important thing which we have learned is how to work remotely, how to work by keeping social distancing, and how to manage meetings online, and how to take decisions online. And at the same time, of course, it's always a new experience because we have always been adjusted to face-to-face meetings. As a teachers, we have always been, as rightly said by Sahil, it was we have very less of a chance of social distancing. We normally don't have that kind of a concept. But and online meetings and all, which is more prevalent in the industry rather than the academics, it has now become more relevant. And at the same time, we also learned new things that yes, conferences can be held online, and papers can be presented online, and all these things are now becoming a reality. And probably keeping in mind the restrictions in travel and the social distancing requirements and all those things, probably we may have conferences and all those things happening maybe in smaller groups, or maybe can be in bigger groups as well, but through online. So a lot of things are happening where our existing offline processes are going to be online. And again, space will become a kind of issue, because tomorrow if you want to maintain social distancing, we really need to look at what classrooms we have to provide, how to schedule the classroom such that only 50% of the students have to be there in the classroom. So it will be a big challenge to come when you are going to really have people offline. So because you have to maintain social distancing, you have to maintain the regulation in terms of the capacity. At the same time, you have to ensure that people are safe, secure, and they don't feel insecure, even the faculties as well. So it is something going to be a little bit of challenge in days to come. However, we are working on that in terms of making our mindset that yes, we have to take up these challenges, look at innovative ways to handle classes, and make sure the student experience doesn't get affected.
Sahil, your comments on this.
Yeah, so as I said, we are a very new organization, so we didn't really have a big team, and that we have to suddenly get online. And a lot of work was already happening digitally for us, because as in a startup phase, people from remote locations, they start joining the organization, and then slowly everyone comes to a single location and starts working together. But the most important learning for us in this period has been that we have to the ability to learn. I mean, learning to learn, I think it's the most important skill that we will see in the coming times. And being an educational institute that applies even more to ourselves, as founders of that institute, as faculty members, as academic leaders of that institute. So every time when we are doing our team meetings online, we keep reflecting on this idea of learning to learn, because we have to not just give it to our student, but also imbibe it within ourselves. Because Corona is just an example. Things will keep coming. It won't be as unfortunate and as drastic as Corona, but the world is so continuously changing now that we can't be stuck with one idea of our education and our knowledge. So the moment we think that we have understood everything and we've got it, I think there our learning stops. But that's the deterrent. After that, our success also stops. So we have to have the ability to learn continuously.
Sandeep sir, the one more challenge during these times is conducting exams or evaluation. So how has university responded?
The university has developed a process for that, and we had been briefed about it some time back. And university is going for a kind of online evaluation in this kind of, and they have given certain guidelines in terms of how the students have to be evaluated. And there is a kind of going to be an online evaluation, which the students will be online examination, in fact. So these examinations have been made more in terms of making sure that taking in mind students, challenges they may have in terms of internet connectivity. So the entire process had made it designed in such a way that all the parameters which are required in terms of conducting the exam has been taken into consideration. And of course, we'll come to know about it when probably in June, when we start the examination process, we'll know further what kind of challenges we may face. But there has been a lot of keeping in mind the UGC guidelines. We have made sure that the students are not affected much by the kind of mode in which they are going to give the examination. We are going to make it more of a kind of not a difficult experience for them. It is going to be a kind of seamless experience. That's what is our expectation. So probably in June, we'll be able to know what kind of further challenges may be there in conducting examinations when we start with that process.
Sahil, your experience?
So we have not done any exams yet because this will be our first academic year. But I'll reflect on my experiences as a student when I was studying at IIT Delhi. A lot of our exams, there was a lot of continuous assessment. So we would be in the class and suddenly the professor would say that now you have a 5-minute quiz, and that would then take up 10% of our the final grades. We would get an open book exam. We would get take-home exam. So we just have to write an essay and come back. So no, everything like this can be done digitally. There's no need for students to get a roll number and sit according to a seating plan and an invigilator. So I think just like we are thinking of new ways of how learning is delivered, we should also think of what is the true purpose of examination. What are we trying to assess in the student, and is the written exam with an invigilator for a set pattern of time and set duration of time, is that the best way to assess? I mean, are we really able to assess what we want to assess through the traditional way of exams?
So it has been a very fruitful discussion. So I request Sandeep sir to make his concluding remarks.
Yeah, thanks Dasharath for involving us in this discussion. And my concluding remarks would be that yes, Corona has given us an opportunity to relearn, go back to basics, understand what can we do, it's an opportunity for us to innovate in terms of teaching, in terms of assessing the students, and also understanding the industry requirements as well. So keeping all that in mind, the Corona has given us an opportunity to learn more, work remotely, and also make the process more flexible. So we have to take this in a positive mindset and also influence it on our colleagues as well as the students, that this is an opportunity for resetting our entire system and trying to make the most out of it rather than taking it as something which is going to push us back.
Sahil ji, your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Dasharath ji. So I also learned a lot from this session and from you and Sandeep ji. My concluding remark would be that I think there was a shift waiting to happen in education particularly, but overall in the way we operate our workplaces, our businesses, our industries and everything. What Corona has done is there were some problems, some issues in our education system, and Corona has brought that in the forefront. The way we conduct examinations, the way we learn, the rigid regulations, the way our parents or the lack of our parents' involvement in our child's education. So all those issues are now at the forefront. Corona has only given us an opportunity to think that these were problems that are there, and now they are in your face, and let's learn from these problems. Let's work out a solution. So that whatever the problems and the shift that was happening in education, Corona has only accelerated that further, so that we really can move in that direction.
Thank you for your valuable inputs. During my student days and me as a teacher, I was thinking that always the government agencies are lethargic. But this is the first time I came to know that maybe UGC or ASCT, they are very active and very proactive. Maybe in terms of issuing guidelines, maybe in terms of helping institutions to come up with new ways of reaching out to students, maybe by opening up their libraries and giving it to the students for free, and conducting many online sessions for free for the students. So this time, people started appreciating these regulatory bodies and the way how they've helped all the educational institutions. Earlier, we had just a notion that these were just to control organizations, rather not helping them. But this time, we came to know these are the agencies which are helping the organizations to perform better. And as both of you have told, we'll have to work on the processes, the methodologies, how we evaluate the students and so on. Thank you, sirs. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us, and for your valuable and inputs that you have given. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sahil ji. Thank you, Sandeep sir. It was a pleasure to listen to both of you. Thank you, sirs.
Thanks Dasharath and Sahil.
Thanks so much, Sandeep ji.